Understanding violence. Definition, causes, types, consequences, and prevention. Violence is a global issue that affects people of all backgrounds and ages. It manifests in numerous forms, impacting individuals and entire communities. Violence goes beyond just physical harm. It includes psychological, emotional, sexual, and economic damage as well. Understanding the different types of violence and their causes is essential for creating effective prevention strategies. This article explores violence's definition, its causes, the various forms it takes, its consequences, and ways to prevent it. Definition of violence. Violence is the intentional use of physical force, power, or threats against oneself, another person, or a group that results in harm, injury, death, psychological damage, or deprivation. This harm can be immediate, like physical injuries, or long-term, as seen in cases of psychological trauma or deprivation of resources. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, violence extends beyond personal aggression and can include structural violence, where systemic issues like discrimination or poverty create conditions of harm over time. Causes of violence. Violence results from a mix of individual, social, and environmental factors. Below are some key contributors. 1. Social inequality. People in communities with high poverty, unemployment, and lack of education may turn to violence out of frustration or as a means of survival. Social exclusion, income inequality, and disenfranchisement can lead to violent behaviors. 2. Psychological factors. Individuals who have experienced trauma, abuse, or neglect, especially during childhood, may be more prone to violent behavior. Mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, and personality disorders can also contribute to violent actions. 3. Cultural and societal norms. In some cultures, certain forms of violence may be normalized. For instance, in some societies, corporal punishment or physical discipline in the home is accepted, which can perpetuate cycles of violence across generations. 4. Substance abuse. Alcohol and drug abuse can impair judgment, leading to impulsive and violent behavior. Studies have shown that substance abuse is linked to domestic violence, street crime, and sexual assault. 5. Environmental influences. Being raised in violent environments or exposed to violent media can desensitize people to aggressive behavior. Children raised in abusive households are more likely to replicate those behaviors as adults. Types of violence and examples. Violence can take many forms, each with its own characteristics and consequences. Below are the primary types of violence, along with real-world examples. 1. Physical violence. This involves the use of physical force with the intent to harm. Example: assault and homicide are direct forms of physical violence. In a domestic setting, a spouse hitting or beating their partner is a common example of physical violence. 2. Psychological, emotional violence. This type of violence is characterized by actions that harm a person's mental and emotional well-being. It includes threats, insults, manipulation, and isolation. Example: verbal abuse in relationships where one partner constantly belittles or humiliates the other is a form of emotional violence. Gaslighting, where someone is manipulated into questioning their own reality, is another common form of psychological violence. 3. Sexual violence. This occurs when a person is coerced or forced into non-consensual sexual acts. Example: rape is the most severe form of sexual violence, but it also includes sexual harassment, which can happen in workplaces, public spaces, or online. Human trafficking for sexual exploitation is another tragic form of sexual violence. 4. Domestic violence. Violence that occurs within the home or between intimate partners. It may include physical, emotional, sexual, or economic abuse. Example, a husband physically abusing his wife or a parent neglecting or emotionally abusing a child are examples of domestic violence. Often, domestic violence escalates over time, creating a cycle of fear and control within the household. 5. Economic violence. This type of violence occurs when one person restricts another's access to financial resources, limiting their independence and ability to escape the situation. Example, in abusive relationships, a partner may control all financial decisions, give the victim limited or no access to money, or prevent them from getting a job. This creates financial dependency, which can trap the victim in the abusive situation. 6. Cyberviolence. With the rise of technology, cyberviolence has emerged as a new form of abuse. It includes online harassment, bullying, and threats, and it can happen through social media, emails, or other digital platforms. Example, cyberbullying, where individuals face online harassment or threats, often causing significant emotional distress. Another harmful form of cyberviolence occurs when intimate photos are shared without consent. Consequences of violence. The consequences of violence are widespread, affecting not only the victim but also families, communities, and society at large. The impacts can be classified into several areas. 1. Physical consequences. These include injuries ranging from minor cuts and bruises to severe outcomes like fractures, permanent disability, or death. Example, a victim of domestic abuse may suffer from long-term physical impairments, such as brain damage or chronic pain from repeated physical violence. 2. Mental health impacts. Victims of violence often suffer from mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, PTSD, or suicidal thoughts. Example, a person who has survived sexual assault may develop PTSD, suffer from panic attacks, or struggle with trusting others. 3. Social effects. Violence erodes trust within communities, weakening social bonds and creating a culture of fear. In some cases, entire neighborhoods or regions become associated with violence, making it difficult for residents to feel safe or thrive. Example, in areas with high rates of gang violence, community members may live in constant fear, avoiding social interactions or public spaces. 4. Economic costs. The financial impact of violence can be enormous, affecting healthcare systems, legal systems, and productivity. Example, domestic violence not only strains healthcare systems due to injury treatment, but also leads to lost wages and job absenteeism for victims who are too traumatized to work. How to prevent violence. Preventing violence requires multi-layered strategies that address root causes while promoting healthy, nonviolent behaviors. Here are several approaches to prevent violence. 1. Education and awareness. Teaching conflict resolution, empathy, and emotional regulation from a young age can significantly reduce the likelihood of violent behavior. School programs and community outreach initiatives can promote nonviolent communication and relationships. Example, anti-bullying programs in schools teach children how to manage conflicts without resorting to aggression, helping reduce both physical and emotional violence. 2. Strengthening legal frameworks. Strong legal measures and strict penalties for violent actions can act as deterrents. Laws that protect vulnerable groups, such as women, children, and marginalized communities, are essential for reducing violence. Example, implementing and enforcing laws against gender-based violence, such as sexual harassment in the workplace, can help create safer environments for women. 3. Community programs. Communities can reduce violence by addressing its underlying causes. Programs that offer job training, provide mental health services, or offer safe spaces for youth can prevent violence from taking root. Example: a youth mentorship program in a high-crime area that offers after-school activities and job training can divert young people from gangs or criminal activity. 4. Reducing exposure to violence. Limiting access to violent media, firearms, and other triggers can reduce violent behavior. Implementing public policies that regulate these areas is essential. Example: gun control measures can reduce the number of firearms in circulation, making it harder for violent altercations to escalate into deadly situations. 5. Promoting mental health services. Providing accessible mental health care, especially for those at risk of committing or suffering from violence, is vital. Early intervention programs that target individuals showing signs of violent tendencies can prevent violence from occurring. Example: offering counseling and support for survivors of domestic violence can help them recover emotionally and break the cycle of violence. Conclusion: violence in all its forms is a critical global challenge. By understanding its causes, types, and consequences, society can develop more effective strategies for prevention and intervention. Whether it is physical violence, emotional abuse, or economic control, addressing the root causes of violence, such as inequality, mental health issues, and social norms, is essential. Through education, stronger laws, community support, and mental health care, societies can take significant steps to reduce violence and create safer, more peaceful communities for all.